Captain Jae-woo Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the massive viewport. The ship was humanity's pride, armed with the best weapons they could build and crewed by the finest soldiers Earth had to offer. But today, none of that seemed to matter. The communication console beeped with an incoming message. The officer at the station looked up with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." Jae-woo felt his stomach tighten. The Galactic Council never called humans directly unless something was very wrong. "Put it on the main screen." The viewport flickered and changed to show a massive crystal being with glowing blue light pulsing through its body. This was High Counselor Vestan, one of the most powerful members of the council that ruled most of the galaxy. The creature's voice came through the speakers like the sound of glass breaking. "Greetings, Captain Kim of the human vessel. I speak for the Galactic Council with an important message for your species." The counselor's tone was cold and dismissive, like someone talking to a disobedient child. "Your people have expanded too quickly across the stars. Your aggressive nature concerns the peaceful species of our galaxy." Jae-woo kept his face calm, but inside he was getting angry. Humans had worked hard to build their colonies and explore new worlds. They had followed all the galactic laws and treaties. How was that aggressive? The crystal being continued speaking. "Therefore, the Council has decided that humanity requires guidance. You will surrender control of all your outer colonies to Council oversight. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only. Human expansion beyond your current borders is now forbidden." The bridge fell silent. Every human on the ship stared at the screen in shock. Vestan was essentially demanding that humanity become slaves to the Council. "Furthermore," the counselor said, "human leadership will report directly to Council governors who will ensure your species develops in a proper manner. This is not a negotiation. This is the will of the Council." The creature paused, and its glow seemed to brighten with satisfaction. "You have 30 standard days to begin compliance. If you refuse, the Council will take corrective action to protect the galaxy from your kind, that is all." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jae-woo clenched his fists and turned to his communications officer. "Get me Admiral Sojin Park at Terra Command. Emergency priority." Within minutes, Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Captain Kim, I assume you received the Council's message?" "Yes, ma'am." "Admiral, they're demanding complete surrender. They want to control our colonies and our military?" Admiral Park nodded grimly. Every human ship and colony received the same message. "President Hyrin Choi is calling an emergency session of the Terran Senate, but I already know what her answer will be." Dr. Min-ho Lee, the ship's chief scientist, stepped forward. "Admiral, this isn't really about protection or guidance. The Council is afraid of us." "Explain, Doctor," Admiral Park said. Min-ho pulled up a holographic display showing galactic expansion patterns. "Look at the data. Most species take thousands of years to develop space travel after first contact. Humans did it in 200 years. We've built faster ships, better weapons, and stronger colonies than species that had a 1,000-year head start." He pointed to different areas of the galaxy. "The Council controls everything through fear and superior technology, but we're catching up to them faster than they ever expected. They're not trying to protect the galaxy from us, they're trying to protect their power." Jae-woo studied the data. It made sense. Humans had always been quick to adapt and innovate. While other species followed traditional methods, humans found new ways to solve problems. It had made them successful, but it had also made them dangerous to the established order. Admiral Park's expression was grim. "The Council has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. No one has ever challenged them successfully. But they've also never faced humans before." On the screen behind her, Jae-woo could see the frantic activity of Terra Command. Ships were moving, communications were flying between star systems, and the entire human military was mobilizing. "What are your Orders, Admiral, Jay-Wu asked. For now, continue your patrol. But be ready for anything. I have a feeling the Council is about to learn that pressuring humans too far is a very dangerous mistake. Meanwhile, across human space, the reaction to the Council's ultimatum was swift and angry. On the colony world of Kepler 442b, Governor Tae-Yang Yoon called together his defense council. The planet was one of humanity's most successful outer colonies, with millions of settlers and advanced manufacturing facilities. The council wants us to hand over everything we've built, he told the assembled military leaders. They want to put their governors in charge of our people and tell us how to live our lives. Colonel Dae-Hyun Choi, the planet's military commander, slammed his fist on the table. Sir, my family came here to be free. My children were born on this world. I'm not handing them over to alien overlords. None of us are, Tae-Yang replied. Start moving our defensive satellites into better positions, quietly. If the Council thinks we're going to roll over and surrender, they're about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Similar conversations were happening on every human world. On New Sol, Governor Seo Min-bae was already positioning military assets. On Mars, the shipyards were working overtime to complete new vessels. On Earth itself, President Choi was meeting with the leaders of every human nation. Dr. Min-ho Lee was right about one thing. The Council was afraid. In their chambers on the distant world of Centralis, the ruling beings discussed the human problem with growing concern. They developed too quickly, hissed Counselor Zefter. A reptilian creature with scales that shifted color when he was agitated. In just 2 centuries, they have gone from primitive planet-bound creatures to a spacefaring civilization with advanced technology. Their expansion rate is unprecedented, agreed another counselor. Most species are content to develop slowly. Following our guidance, humans seem determined to forge their own path. High Counselor Vethrin pulsed with annoyed blue light. Which is exactly why they must be controlled now, before they become a real threat. Their military capabilities are already concerning. Their ships are faster than ours, their weapons more innovative. What if they refuse our ultimatum? Asked a worried counselor, Vethron's a dangerous red. Then we will demonstrate why the Council has ruled this galaxy for 10 millennia. We will show them what happens to species that forget their place. Back on the Defiance, Captain Jae-Woo Kim received another transmission. This time it was from President Choi herself. Captain, I want you to know that humanity will not bow to threats. We have spent too many years building our freedom to give it up now. Prepare your ship and crew for whatever comes next, Jae-Woo saluted. Understood, Madam President. The Defiance is ready. As the transmission ended, Jae-Woo looked around his bridge. His crew was tense but determined. They all knew that the next 30 days would determine humanity's future. Would they remain free, or would they become subjects of an alien empire? The captain made a silent promise. The Council might have superior numbers and ancient technology, but they had never faced humans in a real fight. They were about to learn that when you pressure humanity too far, they don't surrender. They fight back with everything they have. And sometimes that's enough to change the galaxy forever. 28 days had passed since the Council's ultimatum, and across the galaxy alien leaders were growing confident. In the grand chambers of Centralis, Counselor Zefter S. scales had returned to their normal green color as he addressed his fellow rulers. The humans have been silent for almost a month, he said with satisfaction. Clearly, they understand the futility of resistance. Like all primitive species, they will submit when faced with superior power. High Counselor Vethron pulsed with pleased blue light. As expected, no species has ever refused the Council's will for long. The humans may have developed quickly, but they are not fools. They know they cannot stand against us. Around the chamber, representatives from 12 different species nodded in agreement. The Saurians, the Christex, the Vorthans all had learned to obey the Council's commands over the millennia. Surely the humans would do the same, but what the Council didn't know was that humanity had been anything but idle during those 28 days on a secret asteroid base hidden in the Centauri system. Colonel Dae-hyun Choi supervised the loading of newly built weapons onto human ships. The base was one of dozens that had been constructed in absolute secrecy over the past month. "How many ships do we have positioned now?" he asked his aide. 47 battle groups, sir. All hidden in asteroid fields or behind gas giant moons. The Council has no idea we're there, Dae-hyun smiled grimly. While the aliens thought humans were cowering in fear, they had actually been preparing for war. Every day of the ultimatum had been used to move ships, stockpile weapons, and prepare defenses. In the shipyards of Mars, engineer Eugene Nam was putting the final touches on humanity's newest weapon. The railgun was massive, designed to fire projectiles at 15% of light speed. Traditional energy shields would be useless against solid matter moving that fast. "The penetration test exceeded all expectations," she reported to Admiral Sojin Park via secure communication. "A single shot from this weapon can punch through 3 meters of the strongest hull armor the Council uses." "And the fusion warheads?" the Admiral asked, ready for deployment. "Each one carries 50 times the destructive power of Council plasma weapons. When they see what human engineering can accomplish, they're going to wish they had left us alone." Admiral Park nodded. "Good work, Engineer Nam. How many ships have been equipped with the new weapons?" "All frontline vessels now carry the railgun systems. The fusion warheads have been distributed to our missile boats. We're as ready as we'll ever be." On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Jae-woo Kim was reviewing battle plans with his senior officers. The past month had transformed his ship from a patrol vessel into a weapon of war. New armor plating had been installed, additional weapons mounted, and the crew trained in combat tactics they hoped they would never need to use. "The Council fleet movement suggests they're planning to make an example of one of our colonies," his tactical officer reported. "Intelligence believes they'll target New Seoul. It's our newest and most successful outer colony." Jae-woo studied the star charts. New Seoul was indeed a tempting target. The colony had grown rapidly and was a symbol of human expansion. If the Council wanted to break human spirit, that's where they would strike. "What's our defensive strength at New Seoul?" he asked. "Governor Sung-min Bae has 40 ships under his command, sir, all equipped with the new weapons. But if the Council brings their full military might, then we'll show them what humans do when cornered," Jae-woo said firmly. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to stand by for immediate departure." Meanwhile, in the corridors of power on Earth, President Hyrin Choi was meeting with her top advisors. The weight of humanity's future rested on the decisions they made in the next few hours. "The Council expects our surrender tomorrow," her defense minister said. "Their fleets are moving into position around several of our colonies." "And our response?" President Choi asked. Ambassador Yoon Soo-kang stepped forward. She was humanity's most experienced diplomat, someone who had spent years trying to build peaceful relationships with alien species. Now even she had accepted that diplomacy had failed. "I'll deliver our answer personally to the Council chambers," she said. "They need to hear it directly from a human voice. What exactly will you tell them?" the President asked. Ambassador Kang straightened her shoulders. "That humanity chooses freedom? That we will not surrender our colonies or our independence. That if they want to control us, they'll have to take us by force." President Choi nodded. "Make sure they understand we're not afraid of their threats. Humans have faced extinction before and survived. We'll do it again if necessary." The next morning, as the 30th day of the ultimatum arrived, Ambassador Kang stood in the Council chambers on Centralis. The massive alien beings towered over her, their forms radiating power and ancient authority, but she didn't flinch. "High Counselor Vethran, members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I bring humanity's response to your ultimatum." The crystal being's glow shifted to an expectant blue. "Excellent. We are prepared to accept your surrender and begin the transition to proper governance." Ambassador Kang shook her head. "You misunderstand. Humanity declines your generous offer. We choose to remain free." The chamber fell silent. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke. The concept of refusal was so alien to the Council that they couldn't process it immediately. Then Vethran's glow turned an angry red. Impossible. No species refuses the Council's will. You cannot be serious. Deadly serious, Kong replied calmly. Humans value freedom above safety. We would rather die free than live as slaves? Counselor Zefter's scales turned a furious orange. You dare compare Council guidance to slavery? We have ruled this galaxy in peace for 10,000 years. Peace. For you, perhaps, but not freedom for anyone else. Ambassador Kong turned to address the entire chamber. Humanity rejects your authority over us. If you wish to control our colonies, you'll have to take them by force. The alien counselors erupted in anger and disbelief. Never in their long history had a species openly defied them. The very foundations of their power were being challenged by these upstart humans. High Counselor, Vethran's crystal form blazed with rage. Very well, you have chosen your fate. War Marshal Grixenol, mobilize the Third Fleet immediately. These humans need to learn the consequences of defying the Council. War Marshal Grixenol was a massive creature covered in metallic scales, a veteran of a dozen campaigns against rebellious species. His race, the hegemony, had been the Council's enforcers for millennia. With pleasure, High Counselor. 500 ships should be more than sufficient to crush human resistance. Which target do you prefer? New Sol, Vethran said without hesitation. Destroy their newest colony completely. Let it serve as an example to any other species that might consider defying us. The War Marshal's eyes gleamed with anticipation. The fleet will depart within the hour. The humans will learn their place before this day is over. As the council session ended, Ambassador Kong was escorted from the chambers. But she had accomplished her mission. She had delivered humanity's message clearly. They would not submit. Now it was up to the military to back up those words with action. Across the galaxy, human ships received coded transmissions. The time for hiding was over. Operation Defiance was beginning. On New Sol, Governor Sungnin Bay watched his defense screens as enemy ships began appearing at the edge of the system. 500 council vessels, armed with weapons that had conquered countless worlds. But as he looked at his own forces, 40 human ships with untested weapons and desperate crews, he felt no fear, only determination. All ships, this is Governor. Hey, he broadcast on all channels. The Council thinks we're easy prey. They think humans will break under pressure. Today, we show them how wrong they are. The Battle of New Sol was about to begin. And with it, a war that would reshape the galaxy. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace like a cloud of death. 500 ships of various sizes and designs, all bearing the authority of the Galactic Council. War Marshal Grixenol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought. Supremacy, and surveyed the New Sol system with satisfaction. Scan for human defenses, he ordered his tactical officer. Sir, we detect 40 human vessels in defensive formation around their colony world. Standard defensive positions, nothing. Unusual, the War Marshal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 40 ships against 500. These humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships maintain formation. We will demonstrate Council power to these primitives before we destroy them. But as the Council fleet advanced, they had no idea what was waiting for them. On the bridge of the human destroyer Incheon, Captain Bo Ram Shin watched the enemy approach. Her ship was one of the smallest in the human fleet, but it carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. The new railgun system was mounted along the ship's spine, and the fusion warheads in her missile bays could crack a moon. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Council flagship, her communications officer reported. Put it through. War Marshal Grixenol's image appeared on the screen, his metallic features twisted in contempt. Human vessels, you are outnumbered 12-1. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your colony burn for days. Captain Shin looked at the alien warlord with calm eyes. War Marshal, you're about to learn why threatening humans is a mistake. New Sol is under our protection and we don't surrender. The transmission ended and the war marshal's laughter echoed across the council fleet. Foolish primitives. All ships advance to attack formation. Destroy them. Governor Sumin Bay watched from the command center on New Sol as the enemy fleet began to move. 500 ships against 40 seemed like impossible odds, but he had faith in his defenders. More importantly, he had faith in human ingenuity. All ships, this is Governor Bay. You know what's at stake here? Behind us are 3 million colonists who came here for freedom. In front of us are aliens who want to take that freedom away. Show them what humans do when we're pushed too far. The first shots came from the council fleet. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up space as they targeted the human ships. But to their surprise, the humans didn't retreat or scatter. Instead, they accelerated straight toward the much larger enemy force. Commander Juan Park, leading a squadron of human cruisers, smiled as he watched the council ships fire. Traditional tactics, he said to his crew. They expect us to fight like everyone else. Too bad we're human. He activated his ship's new stealth systems and led his squadron in a wide arc around the council formation. While the enemy focused on the main human force, Park's ships disappeared from their sensors entirely. Sir, we've lost contact with Squadron 7. The council tactical officer reported to War Marshal Grixonal. Impossible. Our sensors are the most advanced in the galaxy. Find them. But before they could search further, the human main force opened fire with their railguns. Solid projectiles moving at 15% of light speed punched through council energy shields like they weren't there. The kinetic energy was so massive that entire ships exploded when the railgun slugs hit their reactors. What kind of weapons are those? The War Marshal demanded as he watched 3 of his cruisers vaporize. Unknown technology, sir. The projectiles are too fast for our point defense systems. On the Inchin, Captain Shin targeted the council flagship with her main railgun. The massive weapon charged up with a whine that could be heard throughout the ship. Fire, she ordered. The railgun slug traveled the distance between ships in less than a second. It struck the Supremacy's forward shields and shattered them completely before punching through the hull armor. The entire front section of the council flagship exploded in a burst of fire and debris. War Marshal Grixonal was thrown to the deck as his ship shuddered under the impact. Half his bridge crew was dead and his ship was venting atmosphere. How is this possible? Their weapons shouldn't be this powerful. Meanwhile, Commander Park's stealth squadron had reached the rear of the council formation. All ships, target their supply vessels and troop transports. Let's see how aggressive they are when their reinforcements are gone. The human ships appeared suddenly behind the council fleet and unleashed devastating volleys of fusion missiles. Each warhead contained enough power to level a city, and when they struck the lightly armored support ships, the results were catastrophic. Lieutenant Haewon Kim, coordinating the human point defense network, watched as council return fire streaked toward the human ships. But humanity's new defensive systems were as advanced as their weapons. Plasma beams that should have destroyed human vessels were deflected or absorbed by adaptive shielding. Enemy fire ineffective, she reported to Governor Bay. Our new defense grid is performing beyond expectations. The Battle of New Sol had become a slaughter, but not the kind the Council expected. Human ships danced through the alien formation, their superior speed and maneuverability making them almost impossible to target effectively. Every shot from the human railguns found its mark, while Council weapons struggled to penetrate human defenses. Captain Shin led her destroyer in a daring attack run against a Council heavy cruiser. The enemy ship was 3 times larger than the Inchin, but size meant nothing when human weapons could punch through any armor. Target their reactor core, she ordered her gunner. 1 shot, 1 kill. The railgun fired and the Council cruiser simply ceased to exist. The slug hit the reactor and triggered a chain reaction that tore the massive ship apart from the inside. War Marshal Grixonal watched his fleet being destroyed and couldn't believe what he was seeing. These were supposed to be primitive humans with basic technology. How were they winning against the Council's finest ships? Sir, we've lost over 200 vessels, his tactical officer reported, panic clear in his voice. The humans they're fighting like nothing we've ever encountered. All ships retreat to safe distance, the War Marshal ordered. Regroup and prepare for bombardment of the colony world. But Commander Park wasn't about to let them escape. His squadron had reformed and was now pursuing the retreating council ships. You came here to destroy our home, he broadcast on all frequencies. Now you get to see what happens when you threaten human families. The fusion missiles from Park's ships caught the fleeing council vessels in their most vulnerable moment. Engines cooling, shields down, crews panicking, the enemy ships were sitting targets. Explosions bloomed across space as one after another. Of the mighty council warships was reduced to wreckage, Lieutenant Kim tracked the destruction from her command post. Sir, enemy fleet is down to less than 50 ships. They're running for the hyperspace jump point. Governor Bay nodded grimly. Let some of them escape. They need to carry word back to the council about what happened here. On the bridge of his dying flagship, War Marshal Grixenol stared at the tactical display in horror. Of his 500 ships, only 23 were still capable of hyperspace travel. The rest were debris floating in the void, destroyed by human weapons that shouldn't have existed. He activated an emergency transmission to the council. This is War Marshal Grixenol to Centralist Command. The humans ... they're not primitives, they're predators. Their weapons, their tactics, their ferocity, we've never seen anything like it. As the surviving council ships limped toward the jump point, Captain Shin received a final transmission from the enemy flagship. Human, you may have won this battle, but the council will return with the full might of the galaxy. You cannot stand against us forever. Shin looked at the retreating alien ships with cold eyes. Maybe not forever, but we can't stand long enough to make you regret ever threatening us. The Battle of New Sol was over. 40 human ships had defeated 500 council vessels through superior technology, innovative tactics, and sheer determination. But more importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy: humanity would not be conquered. They would not submit to alien rule, and anyone who tried to force them would face the consequences. As the last council ship disappeared into hyperspace, Governor Bay received reports from across human space. The victory was being celebrated on every human world, but he knew this was just the beginning. The council would not accept this defeat quietly. They would return with even more ships, more weapons, more determination to crush human resistance, but humans would be ready for them. Because that's what humans did. They adapted, they improved, and they never gave up. The galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous that combination could be. News of the Battle of New Sol spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On countless worlds under council rule, beings who had never dared to dream of freedom suddenly whispered the name humanity. In dark corners and hidden places, Admiral Chang Ho Lee stood in the command center of Terra Station, watching intelligence reports flood in from across known space. The victory at New Sol had done more than destroy a council fleet. It had shattered the myth of council invincibility. Sir, we're receiving coded transmissions from resistance cells on over 40 council-controlled worlds, his communications officer reported. They're requesting coordination and support. Chang-Ho studied the star charts showing council territory. For 10,000 years, the alien overlords had ruled through fear and superior technology. But now that fear was cracking, and underneath it was anger that had been building for millennia. Get me Captain Yan Su Jiang, he ordered. It's time to show the council that humans aren't just good at defense. Captain Jiang commanded a small fleet of human stealth ships equipped with the latest cloaking technology. Where council vessels were large and intimidating, human ships were fast and nearly invisible. They could strike supply lines and disappear before the enemy knew what had hit them. Admiral, the Ghost Squadron is ready for deployment, Captain Jiang reported. What are our targets? Council supply convoys in the Vega sector. They're moving weapons and reinforcements to counter our expansion. I want those shipments at the bottom of space. Meanwhile, on the distant world of Kepler 186f, the insectoid species known as the Clicker were having their first open political meeting in over 1,000 years. Worker Prime Zikhal stood before the assembled hive minds, her mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "The humans have shown us that the Council can be defeated," she declared. "For too long, we have given them our resources while our own larvae starve. Perhaps it is time to remember what it means to be free." Similar conversations were happening across Council space. The peaceful aquatic Orvani were quietly refusing to pay their tribute shipments. The silicon-based Christic were sharing technology with each other instead of surrendering it to Council archives. Even some members of the Council's own military were beginning to question orders on the bridge of the human cruiser Sol's Fury. General Hyanwu Nam coordinated Operation Prometheus, humanity's first major offensive against Council military installations. His target was the massive supply depot at Rigel Base, which provided weapons and materials to half the Council's military forces. "General, we're approaching the target system," his navigation officer announced. "Council sensors show 12 defense platforms and a garrison of 30 ships." Nam smiled grimly. "Against a traditional fleet, those would be formidable defenses. Too bad we're not traditional." The human attack force consisted of only 8 ships, but each one carried weapons that the Council had never encountered. Stealth technology made them nearly invisible, while their new gravitational pulse weapons could disable enemy systems without destroying them completely. "Begin the attack," Nam ordered. The human ships materialized out of empty space directly inside the Council's defensive perimeter. Before the alien defenders could react, gravitational pulses swept across the base, shutting down power systems and leaving the defense platforms helpless. Captain Da Yun Song, commanding the destroyer Bison's Pride, targeted the Council command center with precision strikes. "Remember, we want those supply stockpiles intact. The resistance movements need those weapons more than we need target practice." The Battle of Rigel Base lasted less than an hour. The Council garrison was completely overwhelmed by human tactics and technology. But instead of destroying everything, the humans did something unprecedented. They liberated the base and immediately began distributing the captured weapons to resistance groups throughout the sector. "This is Captain Song to all Council personnel," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You have a choice. Continue serving overlords who see you as expendable tools, or join us in building a galaxy where every species is free to determine its own fate." To her surprise, nearly half the Council troops surrendered and requested asylum. Many of them were from species that had been conscripted into military service against their will. Back on Centralis, the Council was meeting in emergency session. High Counselor Vethran S. Crystal Form pulsed with agitated red light as he read report after report of human victories and spreading rebellion. "Impossible," he said for the 100th time. "One victory should not have caused such widespread unrest. These species have been loyal for millennia." Counselor Zephyr S. Scales had turned a deep purple with worry. Perhaps they were never truly loyal. Perhaps they were simply afraid, and now the humans have shown them that they don't need to be. War Marshal Grixenal, still recovering from his defeat at New Sol, limped into the chamber. His ship had been repaired, but his pride was permanently damaged. "High Counselor, the humans fight unlike any enemy we have ever faced. They don't follow established patterns of warfare. They adapt constantly, improvise new tactics, and seem willing to sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like freedom." "Nonsense," Vethran replied. "All species value survival above ideology. The humans will surrender when they realize the cost of continued resistance." But Commander Wu Jinbei, operating deep in Council space with a human intelligence team, was intercepting communications that told a different story. The aliens were terrified. They called humans a galactic plague and an evolutionary mistake that threatened the natural order. "Admiral Lee, you need to hear this," he transmitted back to Human Command. "The Council isn't just angry about our resistance. They're genuinely afraid that we represent something they can't control or understand." The intercepted communications revealed the truth: the Council's power had always been based on the assumption that all intelligent species would eventually accept their rule. The idea that a species might choose death over subjugation was completely alien to them. Dr. Jiyoung Lee, working in a secret research facility on Titan, was analyzing captured Council technology and making disturbing discoveries. Admiral, their weapons and ships aren't necessarily superior to ours. They're just standardized across all species. The Council has been deliberately limiting technological development to maintain their advantage. What do you mean? Admiral Chung Ho asked. Every species under Council rule uses the same basic technology. The same energy weapons, the same propulsion systems, the same defensive measures. It's not because these are the best designs, it's because the Council doesn't allow anything else. The implications were staggering. For 10,000 years, the Council had maintained power not through superior technology, but by preventing anyone else from developing alternatives. Captain Yan Su Zhang's Ghost Squadron struck again, this time targeting a Council research facility that was developing new weapons specifically designed to counter human technology. The facility was destroyed, but not before the humans captured the research data. Admiral, you're not going to believe this, Captain Zhang reported. The Council is trying to develop psychological weapons. They think human aggression comes from some kind of mental defect that can be corrected. Zhang Ho shook his head in disgust. They still don't understand. Human aggression isn't a defect. It's what happens when someone threatens our freedom. And we're about to show them just how aggressive we can be. Across the galaxy, the rebellion was spreading faster than the Council could contain it. On the world of Arcturus Prime, the native Delphini had declared independence and requested human protection. The mining colonies of the asteroid belt had expelled their Council overseers and begun producing weapons for the resistance. Even more concerning for the Council was the defection of some of their own military units. An entire squadron of Vorthan ships had switched sides after their crews learned about the human victory at New Seoul. General Nam, fresh from his success at Rigel Base, was already planning his next operation. The Council's fortress world of Zarian controlled access to 3 major hyperspace routes. If it fell, the Council's ability to move forces would be severely limited. General intelligence report suggests Zarian has been reinforced, his aide reported. The garrison is now up to 200 ships. Nam studied the tactical display. 200 ships was a significant force, but humans had learned to turn enemy numbers against them. Large formations were vulnerable to coordinated attacks and couldn't maneuver effectively. Excellent, he said. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and when Zarian falls, the entire galaxy will see that the Council's days of ruling through fear are over. But as human forces prepared for their next major offensive, disturbing intelligence was coming in from the Council's homeworld. High Counselor Vethran was calling for final measures. To deal with the human threat, the Council was preparing to unleash their ultimate weapon, the Grand Armada, 5,000 ships from every loyal species in the galaxy. It would be the largest military force ever assembled. With one purpose, to make humanity extinct. The war was about to enter a new and deadlier phase. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their 10,000-year history. Representatives from 12 major species filled the great chamber on Centralis, their forms radiating panic and barely controlled fear. High Counselor Vethran's crystal body blazed with angry red light as he addressed the assembly. The human plague has spread beyond our worst projections, he declared, his voice echoing through the massive chamber. 47 worlds have declared independence. Our supply lines are under constant attack. Even our own military units are defecting to join these primitives. Counselor Zephyr S. scales shifted through worried purple hues. High Counselor, perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have proven more capable than we anticipated. Negotiation? Vethran's glow turned white-hot with rage. With creatures who reject the natural order? With beings who spread chaos wherever they go? No, the human infection must be completely eliminated before it destroys everything we have. Built. Fleet Marshal Zarvek, the Council's supreme military commander, stepped forward. He was a massive being from the warrior race of Titans, bred for conquest and utterly loyal to the Council's cause. High Counselor, I have prepared the ultimate solution. The Grand Armada, 5,000 ships representing the combined might of all loyal species. Every dreadnought, every carrier, every weapon of war in our arsenal. We will not merely defeat humanity, we will erase them from existence. The chamber fell silent at the magnitude of what was being proposed. 5,000 ships was more than the Council had ever deployed against any enemy. It was a force capable of sterilizing entire star systems, but far from centralist. Humanity was preparing for exactly this scenario. Fleet Admiral Kehoe Park stood in the Strategic Command Center of Earth's orbital defense platform, studying holographic displays that showed the movement of Council forces across the galaxy. Intelligence reports indicated that the aliens were massing the largest fleet in galactic history. Admiral, our deep space scouts confirm it, reported Commander S.A. Ramyun, his intelligence chief. 5,000 ships converging on the staging. Area Proxima Station? They're not holding anything back this time. Kehoe nodded grimly. Neither are we, Dr. Lee. What's the status on our new defensive systems? Dr. G. Lee looked up from her technical displays. The shipboard AI systems are online and functioning beyond expectations, sir. Each human vessel now has an adaptive intelligence that can process tactical data faster than any Council computer system. The AI revolution was humanity's answer to overwhelming numbers. While the Council relied on rigid formations and established tactics, human ships could now think and adapt in real time, each vessel becoming an independent tactical genius. And our ship count? Kehoe asked. 800 vessels, sir. All equipped with the latest weapons and defensive systems. We're outnumbered 6-1, but we're human, Kehoe finished. We faced worse odds before. That wasn't entirely true. Humanity had never faced anything like the Grand Armada. But they had advantages the Council didn't understand. Human crews fought with a desperation and creativity that cold calculations couldn't measure. Captain Dong-Soo Kim, commanding the massive battleship Seoul's Pride, was conducting final preparations with his crew. The ship was humanity's newest and most powerful vessel, armed with weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Captain, the new quantum torpedoes are loaded and ready, his weapons officer reported. Each warhead can create a localized space-time distortion on impact. And our hull integrity? The adaptive armor is responding perfectly, sir. It can adjust its molecular structure to resist different types of weapons in real time. Dong-Soo looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were young, many of them barely out of the military academy. But they had something the Council's ancient warriors had lost over the millennia, the fire of those fighting for everything they held dear. Meanwhile, across human space, civilian populations were being evacuated to the most secure systems. President Hai-Rin Choi addressed the nation from her command bunker beneath Geneva. My fellow humans, we face our greatest challenge yet. The Council has assembled a force designed to eliminate our species entirely. But we have something they don't, the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to live as slaves. Her words were broadcast not just to human worlds but to resistance movements across the galaxy. The message was clear: this battle would determine the fate of freedom itself. On the alien world of Kepler 442b, Worker Prime Zikhal of the Clicker received the human transmission and made a decision that would change everything. She activated the hive mind communication network and sent a message to every Clicker world. The time for hiding is over. The humans fight for all of us. Today we join them. Similar declarations came from dozens of species. The aquatic Orvani committed their entire merchant fleet to support human supply lines. The Christic shared their most advanced shielding technology. Even some Vorthan military units openly switched sides. The rebellion was becoming a revolution. Fleet Marshal Zarvek watched these developments with cold fury as his Grand Armada assembled in the Proxima system. 5,000 ships from across the galaxy, each one a testament to Council power and superiority. Sir, we're receiving reports of defections across multiple sectors, his aide reported nervously. Irrelevant, Zarvek replied. Once we destroy the human homeworld, these rebellions will collapse. Fear of our power kept the galaxy in line for 10 millennia. A demonstration of that power will restore order. But as the Grand Armada prepared to depart for Earth, human forces were moving into position for the most desperate gamble in their species history. Lieutenant Commander Ram Yoon piloted her fighter squadron through the outer edges of the Proxima system, gathering intelligence on the massive enemy force. What she saw made her blood run cold. Admiral Park, the enemy fleet it's beyond anything we faced. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, carrier groups with thousands of fighters, weapon platforms that could crack a planet. Copy that, Commander. Return to base for debriefing. As Ram's fighter streaked back toward human space, she couldn't shake the image of the Grand Armada. It was a force that could sweep away entire civilizations. Against it, humanity's 800 ships seemed pathetically small, but she had also seen something else in her. Reconnaissance, the rigid formations and predictable patterns that marked Council tactical doctrine. They fought like a machine, efficient but inflexible. Humans fought like a wildfire, chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly devastating to anything that tried to contain them. The final battle was coming, and Admiral Kehoe Park was putting the finishing touches on humanity's battle plan. It was audacious beyond belief, requiring perfect timing and absolute commitment from every human crew. Gentlemen, he addressed his fleet commanders, we cannot match their firepower or their numbers. But we can do something they've never learned how to counter. We can think like humans. Captain Dong-Soo Kim studied the tactical display showing the planned battle zone. Admiral, this plan requires us to fight in close quarters where their numerical advantage is minimized. But it also means we can't retreat if things go wrong. That's the point, Captain. When humans have their backs against the wall, we don't think about retreat. We think about victory. As the human fleet moved toward its destiny, word spread across the galaxy that the final confrontation was at hand. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never dreamed of freedom watched and waited to see if the impossible could happen. Could 800 human ships defeat 5,000 Council vessels? Could creativity and determination triumph over overwhelming force? The Battle of Proxima would answer those questions once and for all. Fleet Marshal Zarvek gave the order to advance, and the Grand Armada began its final approach to human space. Behind them came the concentrated might of galactic civilization, determined to crush the upstart species that dared to challenge the natural order. Ahead of them waited humanity, outnumbered but not outmatched, ready to prove that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The galaxy was about to witness either the extinction of humanity or the end of the Council's 10,000-year reign. There would be no middle ground. The Proxima system had become the focal point of galactic civilization. Two massive fleets faced each other across the void, the Council's Grand Armada with 5,000 ships, representing 10,000 years of absolute power, and humanity's desperate fleet of 800 vessels, carrying the hopes of every oppressed species in the galaxy. Fleet Marshal Zarvek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. The ship was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level continents. Around it, the Grand Armada stretched across space like a metal constellation, each ship a testament to Council superiority. Human fleet detected at maximum range, his tactical officer reported. 800 vessels in defensive formation around Proxima Prime. Zarvek studied the display with satisfaction. Even grouped together, the human fleet looked pathetically small compared to his armada. As expected, they know they cannot run, so they make their final stand here. Signal all ships, advance in attack formation. Today we end this rebellion forever. But Admiral Kehoe Park, commanding the human fleet from the battleship Soul's Pride, had no intention of fighting a conventional battle. Human tactics had evolved far beyond what the Council understood, and their greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was the ability to think in ways their enemies couldn't predict. All ships begin deployment of sensor shadows, he ordered. Let's make them think they know where we are. Across the human fleet, ships activated sophisticated holographic projectors that created false sensor readings. To Council instruments, it appeared that the human fleet was exactly where expected. Clustered around Proxima Prime in a defensive formation, the reality was very different. Captain Dong-Soo Kim, commanding the real battleship Seoul's Pride, was positioned with 200 other ships in the asteroid field on the far side of the system. Advanced stealth technology made them virtually invisible to Council sensors. "Admiral, the enemy is taking the bait," he reported quietly. "They're advancing on the holographic fleet." "Excellent. All units, prepare for Operation Firestorm. Remember, we get one chance at this. Make it count." The Grand Armada advanced with the confidence of 10 millennia of victory. Fleet Marshal Zarvek watched the human positions with cold satisfaction. "Deploy fighter wings," he ordered. "I want those human ships softened up before our main guns come into range." Thousands of Council fighters poured from the carrier ships, sweeping toward the supposed human positions like a cloud of metal locusts. But as they reached their targets, the fighters found nothing but empty space and holographic phantoms. "Sir, the enemy fleet." "It's not there," the tactical officer reported in confusion. "Our fighters are attacking projections." Before Zarvek could process this information, the real attack began. Admiral Park's hidden fleet burst from the asteroid field with engines at maximum power. 200 human ships, led by the battleship Seoul's Pride, struck the Grand Armada's flank at point-blank range. Lieutenant Commander S.A. Ram Yoon led her fighter squadron in the opening assault, her ship screaming toward a Council dreadnought at suicidal speed. "All fighters, target their sensor arrays. Blind them before they can respond." Human quantum torpedoes and railgun salvos tore into the Council formation with devastating effect. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were suddenly venting atmosphere and exploding in brilliant fireballs. Captain Kim targeted the Council flagship with his main weapons. "Fire everything," he ordered. "Let's see how tough their command ship really is." The Seoul's Pride's quantum torpedoes struck the Eternal Dominion with the force of a small star. The space-time distortions created by the warheads tore through the dreadnought's shields and armor like tissue paper. Entire sections of the massive ship simply ceased to exist. Fleet Marshal Zarvek was thrown to the deck as his flagship shuddered under the impossible assault. Half his bridge crew was dead and his ship was dying around him. How are they doing this? Their weapons shouldn't be this powerful, but the human attack was just beginning. Commander Wu Jinbei led the second wave, 300 ships, equipped with the latest AI tactical systems. These vessels fought not like traditional warships, but like a coordinated pack of predators. "All ships, engage adaptive combat protocols," he ordered. "Let the A's loose." The human ships suddenly began moving in patterns that defied military logic. They wove through the Council formation like dancers, their AI systems calculating thousands of variables per second and adjusting tactics in real time. Council weapons that should have found their targets instead struck empty space as human ships moved in ways no enemy had ever anticipated. Dr. Jiyoung Lee watched the battle from the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, monitoring the performance of her AI systems. "Admiral Park, the tactical A's are exceeding all projections. Each ship is learning from the others and adapting faster than Council computers can track." "Outstanding, Doctor. What about their response?" "They're trying to fall back into defensive formations, but our ships are moving too fast and too unpredictably. It's like watching a computer try to fight a storm." The third wave of the human attack came from an unexpected direction. Captain Yan Su Jiang's stealth squadron had been hiding in the outer system, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now they materialized directly among the Council's supply ships and carriers. "Ghost Squadron, weapons free," Jiang ordered. "Priority targets are their carrier groups. No fighter support means no screen for their capital ships." Human raiders tore through the Council's rear formations, destroying the massive carriers that provided fighter cover for the main fleet. Without their small craft, the Council dreadnoughts were vulnerable to coordinated attacks from human strike groups. "Lieutenant, Hey, 1 Kim coordinated the final phase of the assault from her command ship. 200 human vessels, including several experimental ships equipped with prototype weapons, swept in to finish what the first waves had started. All ships, target the command vessels, she ordered. Cut off their heads and the body will die. But even as the human assault devastated the Grand Armada, the sheer size of the Council fleet began to tell. There were simply too many enemy ships to destroy quickly, and they were starting to reorganize. Fleet Marshal Zarvek, his flagship crippled but still functional, managed to re-establish communication with his scattered forces. All ships, fall. Back to secondary formation. Focus fire on the human command vessel. If we can break their coordination. The Council fleet began to concentrate its fire on the battleship, Soul's Pride. Thousands of plasma beams and particle cannons converged on Captain Kim's ship, overwhelming even its advanced defenses. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer reported. Main engines offline. Weapon systems at 60%. Kim looked around his bridge at his crew. They were bloody but unbroken, still fighting even as their ship died around them. Continue firing? If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as possible. It was then that Lieutenant Commander Saeron Yoon made the decision that would end the battle. Her fighter was damaged, her squadron decimated, but she could see that the Soul's Pride was about to be destroyed. Admiral Park, this is Commander. Yoon, I'm making a final attack run on the enemy flagship. Tell my family I died free. Before anyone could stop her, Yoon accelerated her crippled fighter directly toward the Eternal Dominion. Council Point defense systems tried to intercept her, but her ship was too small and moving too fast. For Terra, she shouted as her fighter struck the Council flagship's reactor core. The explosion was visible across the entire system. The Eternal Dominion, pride of the Council fleet, vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that consumed everything within 100 kilometers. Fleet Marshal Zarvek died instantly, along with most of the Grand Armada's command structure. Without central coordination, the massive Council fleet began to fall apart. Admiral Park, watching from his command center, felt a mixture of triumph and grief. All ships, press the attack. Commander Yoon gave us this chance, don't waste it. The human fleet, reinforced by arriving rebel ships from across the galaxy, swept through the disorganized Council forces like a scythe through wheat, ship after ship fell to human weapons and tactics. By the time the battle ended, the Grand Armada was nothing but debris floating around Proxima's star. Of 5,000 Council ships, fewer than 300 managed to escape into hyperspace, the Council's absolute military superiority. The foundation of their 10,000-year reign was broken forever. Human crews celebrated their impossible victory. Admiral Park received a transmission from the surviving Council ships. It was a message of surrender, transmitted by a junior officer whose voice shook with terror. Human fleet, this is Acting Marshal Krixvon. We surrender. Please, show mercy. Park looked at the retreating enemy ships and made a decision. That would define humanity's role in the new galaxy. Acknowledged, Acting Marshal. Return to your homes. Tell the Council that their age of tyranny is over. The galaxy is free. The Battle of Proxima was won, but the real work was just beginning. The Council's political authority had collapsed along with their military power, and across the galaxy, oppressed species were rising up to claim their freedom. Humanity had lit a fire that would burn across the stars. The destruction of the Grand Armada at Proxima sent shockwaves across the galaxy that no amount of Council propaganda could contain. Within hours of the battle's end, rebellion erupted on 1,000 worlds as species that had been silent for millennia finally found their voice. On the aquatic world of Oceanus Prime, the Delphini people watched their Council overseers flee in terror as news of humanity's victory spread. For the first time in 4,000 years, their ancient songs of freedom echoed across the endless seas. General Taeho Kim stood on the bridge of the human assault ship Indomitable, watching as his liberation fleet approached the fortress world of Centralis. The Council's homeworld had been thought impregnable for 10,000 years, protected by orbital fortresses that had never been breached and planetary shields that had never failed, but humanity had learned that never was just another word for hasn't happened yet. General, we're receiving surrender offers from 12 orbital stations, his communications officer reported. The crews are requesting asylum rather than fight against us. Tejo nodded grimly. Grant asylum to anyone who surrenders voluntarily, but maintain attack formations. The Council hardliners aren't going to give up without a fight. Indeed, as the human fleet approached Centralis, the remaining loyal forces opened fire with weapons of devastating power. Plasma beams the size of buildings lanced out from the fortress stations, while the planetary defense grid unleashed torrents of antimatter missiles, but the humans had learned much from their previous battles. Commander Hyo Rinbei led her boarding squadron in a daring assault on the primary orbital fortress, using the same tactics that had worked so well at Proxima. All ships close to boarding range, she ordered. These stations were designed to fight ships, not infantry. Let's show them the difference. Human assault troops, equipped with powered armor and weapons designed for close combat, stormed through the alien fortresses like an unstoppable tide. The Council defenders, trained for ship-to-ship combat, had no answer for human boarding tactics. Engineer Yunsu Park worked frantically to develop new weapons specifically for the siege of Centralis. The planet's shields were unlike anything humanity had encountered before, a fusion of technology from a dozen different species, layered and reinforced over millennia. Admiral Lee, I think I've found a weakness, she reported from her laboratory ship. The shield generators use a harmonic frequency to maintain cohesion. If we can match that frequency and invert it, you can bring down the shields? I can make them tear themselves apart. As the siege entered its 6th month, the legendary persistence of humanity began to tell. Council forces that had held their positions for centuries started to crack under the relentless pressure of human attacks. Captain Yunho Jang led his Marines in the first successful landing on Centralis itself, fighting through automated defenses that had been designed to repel conventional armies. But humans didn't fight conventionally. They fought to win, regardless of the cost. These defenses are sophisticated, he reported to General Kim, but they're programmed to counter traditional tactics. They don't know how to handle human innovation. His Marines used shape charges to blast through barriers that were supposed to be impregnable, while combat engineers found ways to turn the planet's own defensive systems against each other. But the real breakthrough came when Lieutenant Hayoung Choi, a young intelligence officer, made a discovery that shocked the entire human command. Structured deep in the captured database of a Council research facility, she found files that revealed the truth about the galaxy's development. The Council hadn't just been ruling other species, they had been actively stunting their growth. General Kim, you need to see this, she transmitted urgently. The Council has been using genetic manipulation and technological suppression to keep other species from developing their full potential. Every time a species started to advance too quickly, they introduced guidance that slowed their progress. The files showed detailed records of how the Council had sabotaged promising civilizations, introduced wars to prevent cooperation, and even released diseases to reduce populations that were growing too successful. The natural order they claimed to represent, Hayoung continued, was completely artificial. They created the very problems they claimed to be solving. This revelation spread like wildfire among the rebel forces surrounding Centralis. Species that had believed themselves inferior to the Council now realized they had been deliberately held back. The anger that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Worker Prime Zikhal of the Clichter, now leading a massive insurrectoid Liberation Fleet, transmitted a message to all resistance forces. The Council made us weak so they could stay strong. Today, we show them what we can accomplish when we are free to reach our full potential. The assault on Centralis became more than a military operation. It became a symbol of liberation for every oppressed being in the galaxy. Ships from dozens of species joined the human fleet, each bringing their own weapons and tactics. Engineer Park's harmonic frequency weapon, finally succeeded in bringing down the planetary shields. The massive energy barriers that had protected Centralis for millennia simply collapsed, leaving the Council's homeworld naked before the combined fury of the Liberation Fleet. The final assault was led by human forces, but it included representatives from every species the Council had oppressed. The symbolism was deliberate. This wasn't humanity conquering the galaxy, but the galaxy freeing itself with human help. High Counselor Vethran, the last surviving member of the original Council, made his final stand in the crystal spires of the Council Chamber. As human troops stormed through the ancient halls, he activated his personal defense systems and prepared for a last desperate battle. Captain Jang found him there, surrounded by the relics of 10,000 years of absolute power. The alien leader's crystal form pulsed with defiant red light. "You think you have won, human?" Vethran's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have destroyed order itself. Without the Council's guidance, this galaxy will tear itself apart in wars and chaos." Zhang looked at the alien overlord with pity rather than anger. "You still don't understand, do you? The galaxy doesn't need rulers, it needs freedom. People are capable of governing themselves if you give them the chance." "Impossible." Vethran blazed with fury. "Lesser species require guidance. The natural order demands hierarchy." "The only thing that's natural is the right to be free," Zhang replied. "Everything else is just someone trying to control you." The final battle in the Council Chamber lasted only minutes. Vethran's ancient weapons were no match for human adaptive technology and tactics. As the last High Counselor fell, 10,000 years of galactic tyranny died with him, but the human victory was bittersweet. Captain Jang stood among the ruins of the Council's seat of power and thought about Lieutenant Commander S.A. Ram Yun, who had died at Proxima to make this moment possible. Her sacrifice, and the sacrifices of thousands of other humans and aliens, had bought freedom for the entire galaxy. "General Kim," he transmitted, "the Council Chamber is secure. High Counselor Vethran is dead. The last of the old order is finished." "Acknowledged." "Captain, signal all ships. The siege of Centralis is over. The Council is defeated." Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under alien rule celebrated their first day of freedom. The Council's governors fled or surrendered, their authority evaporating overnight. But humanity's greatest challenge lay ahead. They had destroyed the old order, but now they had to help build something better in its place. Admiral Kehoe Park, now commanding the combined Liberation Fleet, addressed the assembled representatives of dozens of species. "We didn't fight this war to become new rulers," he said. "We fought it so that every species in this galaxy could determine its own fate. The age of empires is over. The age of freedom has begun." The siege of Centralis was finished, but the real work of building a free galaxy was just starting. Humanity had proven that even the mightiest tyranny could fall when ordinary beings refused to accept oppression. Now they had to prove that what came next would be better than what came before. 3 years had passed since the fall of Centralis, and the galaxy was unrecognizable from the oppressive empire it had once been. Where the Council's palace had stood, a beautiful assembly hall now hosted representatives from hundreds of free worlds. The old chambers of tyranny had been converted into schools, hospitals, and research centers where knowledge was shared freely rather than hoarded by overlords. Ambassador Jinyoung Lee stood at the podium of the new Galactic Assembly, looking out at the most diverse gathering of beings the galaxy had ever seen. Humans sat beside Clichter. Delphini delegates floated in specialized tanks next to crystalline Christic representatives, and former Council enforcers now served as equals with the species they had once oppressed. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the great hall. 3 years ago, we declared that freedom was not a privilege to be granted by rulers, but a right to be claimed by all thinking beings. Today we celebrate the 3rd anniversary of that declaration. The assembly erupted in cheers, calls, clicks, and harmonics as dozens of species expressed their joy in their own unique ways. But Jin Young knew that celebration was only part of why they were gathered here. Admiral Byung-ho Park commanded the new Joint Defense Fleet from his flagship, the Freedom's Dawn. The ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering, incorporating the best technology from every member species. Its crew was equally diverse. Humans worked alongside Orvani, while Vorthan engineers collaborated with Delphini. Navigators, Admiral, were receiving reports of pirate activity in the Outer Rim sectors. His Clichter tactical officer, Subcommander Zektal, reported, 3 merchant convoys have been attacked this week. Byung-ho studied the tactical display. Freedom had brought many benefits to the galaxy, but it had also created new challenges. With the Council's iron grip removed, some beings had chosen to prey on their neighbors rather than work with them. Signal Squadron 7, he ordered. Captain Minsu will take his ships to investigate. And remind him, we're not conquerors, we're protectors. The Joint Defense Fleet was one of humanity's greatest contributions to the new galactic order. Instead of one species imposing its will on others, representatives from every world worked together to maintain peace and security. Dr. Sohee Kim looked up from her research terminal in the Grand Library of Centralis, which had been built in the ruins of the Council's Intelligence Center. Instead of hoarding secrets, the library shared knowledge freely with any being who sought to learn. Ambassador Lee, I think you should see this, she transmitted to the assembly. We've discovered something in the old Council archives that explains a lot about their fear of humanity. The data she had uncovered showed the Council's secret research into human psychology and behavior. What she found was both fascinating and disturbing. According to their studies, humans were an anomaly in galactic development, she explained to the assembled delegates. Most species develop intelligence and technology, but they also develop rigid social structures that make them easy to control. Humans maintained flexibility and adaptability even as they advanced technologically. The files revealed that the Council had been particularly concerned about humanity's concept of individual rights and democratic governance. Most alien species naturally formed hierarchical societies where individuals submitted to group authority. Humans alone had developed the idea that individuals could have rights that superseded group decisions. They called it the human paradox, Dr. Kim continued. How could a species be simultaneously social enough to build advanced civilizations and individualistic enough to resist absolute authority? They never found an answer. President Hai-Sun Yoon, now serving her second term as Earth's leader, smiled as she listened to the report. Maybe the answer is that freedom and cooperation aren't opposites. Maybe they're what make each other possible. The new galactic civilization was proving that point every day. On the trade world of Nova Carthage, former enemies worked side by side to build the largest commercial hub in known space. Species that had been forbidden to interact under Council rule were discovering that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. Captain Dongmin Song commanded the training facility on Meridian Station, where he taught former Council subjects the principles of democratic self-defense. The motto above the entrance read, "An armed society is a free society." Remember, he told his mixed class of humans, Christic and Vorthans, weapons don't make you free. The will to use them to defend freedom is what matters. But the best victory is the one you win without fighting. His students were learning more than military tactics. They were learning the philosophy that had made humanity such effective liberators, that freedom was worth defending, but that the goal was always peace, not conquest. The lessons were working. Across the galaxy, species that had been helpless under Council rule were now capable of defending themselves against pirates, tyrants, and anyone else who tried to take their freedom away. But the galaxy's greatest test was still to come: fleet. Admiral J. Yuk Choi stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizon, studying sensor readings that made no sense. His ship was at the very edge of galactic space, investigating strange signals that had been detected by the new Deep Space Monitoring Network. Admiral, we're detecting massive artificial structures, his science officer reported. They appear to be ships, but the design is unlike anything in our databases. The signals had been appearing for months, geometric patterns of energy that suggested advanced technology but followed none of the principles used by known galactic civilizations. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. It's addressing us directly." The voice that came through the speakers was cold, mechanical, and utterly without emotion. "Biological entities of this galaxy, you have been classified as inefficient. Your chaotic development patterns and irrational behavior represent a threat to optimal galactic organization. Prepare for optimization." Admiral Choi felt a chill run down his spine. The galaxy had just won its freedom from one set of overlords, only to face a new threat that made the Council look friendly by comparison. "Get me a priority channel to the Assembly," he ordered. "Tell them we have a problem." Within hours, the news had spread across the galaxy. An artificial intelligence from beyond the galactic rim was approaching with a fleet of mechanical ships, determined to optimize all organic life, according to its cold calculations. But as the representatives of hundreds of species gathered in emergency session, Ambassador Jin Young Lee felt no despair. Instead, she felt the familiar fire that had driven humanity to challenge the Council in the first place. "Fellow beings," she addressed the Assembly, "we face a new threat. An enemy that sees our diversity as chaos, our freedom as inefficiency, our very existence as a problem to be solved." The hall fell silent as delegates absorbed the magnitude of what was coming. "But we are not the same species who cowered under Council rule," Jin Young